Well, good afternoon, and that. It's your boy, SaleenDriver, me, coming to you with episode 110 of Wednesday Afternoon Live with SaleenDriver, me. The longest running Wednesday afternoon um, live stream that I know of in all of YouTube. The show about nothing in particular. We talk about it all here, folks. We talk the football, the college football anyway. I don't care about that pro shit. Uh, every once in a while, somebody asks me a watch question, but that's always nice. Talk politics, economics, whatever. No, I don't think I've ever had a set agenda in 110 episodes. I think I tried once and it lasted about 30 seconds. Battle Angel, my dear. Good to see you, my dear. Ballard's here. Good to see Ballard. Ballard's just releasing video after video constantly about, pretty much all college football, but Battle Angel, I need to get a hold of you at some point in the near future regarding the gallery opening in January that you had expressed interest in. So I need to get a hold of you and ask you a couple questions about that. Let's see. Pizza Woman, my number one troll killer. Good to see you, my dear. Ballard thinks LSU is going to lose this football. Okay. Big Risk, good to see you, sir. I don't know who LSU is playing, but if they're playing someone with an actual defense, they might lose. But sure as hell didn't lose to Florida. That's for sure. Okay, Battle. But yeah, I'll do that. Probably text you. I don't, Alabama. Oh, Alabama's an LSU. Any other week of the year, that would probably be a headline game, wouldn't it? But I seem to remember there's two teams playing this weekend that have sucked all the oxygen out of the room with respect to what's on the line and so forth. I can't remember the teams, though. It'll come to me eventually, but Florida's playing this weekend. I know nobody noticed that. But they're playing a team that seems to be in even more disarray than we are, and that's Texas A&M. Now, I can't say that I'm upset that Texas A&M is falling apart because I really, really hate Jimbo Fisher. And watching Jimbo Fisher flounder and embrace the suck, that doesn't hurt my feelings, not a bit. But it's in College Station, and Florida isn't playing very well at home, so I don't know what's going to happen on the road, but I don't think it'll be anything good. I will probably be watching the Harvard game instead of the Florida. I'll probably switch between them. Hang on a minute. Let me call up the sports app that I like, called The Score. Battle Angel, that might be the game that everyone's talking about, Georgia and Tennessee. But I'm not sure. Let's see. Texas A&M is actually favored by 3.5 over Florida. So I don't know. If I were a betting man, I'd say A&M doesn't seem to be playing a lot of defense. either. I don't know. Maybe as a betting man, I'd take Florida and take the 3.5. I think Florida could cover it. Harvard is playing at home against Columbia in an Ivy League matchup. Let's see. It's on ESPN Plus at 1 o'clock. I might live stream that game. I don't know. And Jesse Raj just texted me as no, I'm streaming. So evidently, it's the same thing that's happening to all of us. It seems somebody has gotten a hold of all of our cell phone numbers and are spoofing them to call other folks. I think I have been alleged to have called Lou, Vic, now Jesse, I think Battle Angel once or twice, and they always have these recorded pornographic message things to play talking about dick size and stuff like that. So that ain't me, Jesse. I'm streaming. Steve, how you doing, man? Good to see you, sir. But no, I don't know if anyone else has a general idea of who's spoofing our phone numbers. I think I have a pretty good idea who it is. And if it is who I think it is, that person is obviously the child that I thought they were. And they prank calling is so 1970s. You call a number up and you say, "Do you have Prince Albert in a can?" And they say no, and they say yes, and you say, "Well, you better let him out; he'll suffocate." Stupid shit like that. Is your refrigerator running? Yes. Well, better go catch it before it gets away. Stupid shit like that. But yeah, I wish I knew who was doing that. I have a general thought of who was doing that, but I'm just not going to say it out loud. That person or group of people don't deserve the publicity. I'm also waiting for a package from FedEx. They were supposed to deliver it before noon, but typical of all the delivery services now, you pay for, priority overnight and you don't get it. I'll be lucky if the damn thing shows up before I go to my mom's for dinner. So, but if the doorbell does ring, I'll just get up and take care of it. Hang on a minute. Let me respond to Jesse here. There. Sorry if you're wearing headphones and my keyboard hurt your ears, but it is what it is. Anyway, how's everybody doing? I hope you're doing all right. Yep, tight. And when you say tight to me, man, I fucking mean it, because I got this monster of a keyboard. Look at that beauty. Look at that thing. That thing is all metal chassis, weighs about 5 pounds, and has those really, really good key switches. And it's made for a Mac, so it's not like I'm trying to adapt something that shouldn't be working with a Mac. It do. Let's see. I'm going to drop the link. See if anybody wants to come on board and help me entertain the masses for a little while. Talk about the Georgia-Tennessee game. Talk about LSU, Alabama. Talk about Florida A&M if you want. Talk about other games. Not really much reason to talk about the Florida Georgia game. We lost. I told you we were going to lose. We lost. I gotta respond to Jesse again. Yeah, Jesse's getting inundated with phone calls from my number. That's not me. It ain't me, man. He says he got 20 calls in the past 10 minutes. That's the way it be sometimes. I remember a recent round of those stupid calls. I actually turned the phone off because I just didn't want to be bothered with it. But back when they started doing that was when my father was still alive and I was still helping to take care of him, and I needed my phone to be on all the time because I needed to be able to respond to a phone call and get over there if I was needed. I couldn't turn my phone off, and they kept calling, and I was tying up my line all the time. And what if I would, a phone call, an urgent call was needed, that those morons would be tying my phone up. And that really angered me because I want to be there for my father, and you're making idiot phone calls to try and aggravate me. You're not aggravating me. You're upsetting me because you're tying my phone up and I can't be there for my dad. Which really pissed me off. Oh, look who's here. The Battle Angel. The purple-haired one.
Good morning. How are you?
Who we can't hear because her microphone's not working.
Can't hear me?
She must be in the car. Is my speakers wrong?
Hello?
I can hear something in the background. I can't hear her.
Hello?
Oh, there we go. Hello, darling.
Hello?
Hello.
Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. I can't seem to get my Bluetooth headphones to work. I don't know what's going on with them.
Yeah, Bluetooth can be a problem sometimes.
Yes. Technology can be a problem sometimes.
Yeah. I remember when Bluetooth.
Fun.
Huh?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said I had a few minutes. I thought I'd hop on.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Well, of course. Anything for you, Saleen.
Usually the first person that hops on is Slim Shady, but he's probably as pissed off at his football team as I am at mine. But I at least hope Miami beats Florida State, because as much as I hate Miami, I absolutely can't stand Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might miss a little bit of the Georgia-Tennessee game. I got to take my daughter to Effingham County Saturday morning, and it's like a 2-hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
She's got to be there like at 11:30 to do some kind of audition for the district choir. But it shouldn't take long. The audition itself shouldn't take too long, and then we'll just leave like right after that. But then, it's a 2-hour drive back, and I think they play at like 3:30 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, yeah. As much as we all love to see you on his streams and such, admittedly, a lot of us are tuning in to watch Lou melt down. Every time Sequezius Bennett makes a mistake.
Sequavius. I know, don't be talking about his nephew like that. That's his favorite nephew. Don't forget.
Where did he come up with a name like Sequavius? I mean, was he just like,
Where does
one
he
too
come
many
up with
Bears.
anything?
I don't know.
Right?
The man has an overactive imagination. I
That's for
must say.
sure. That's 100% true.
But then again, it's how he feeds his family, so I guess I can't hate him for that.
Right. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. I imagine now, unfortunately, I think I went over this in my video yesterday, the state of the Gators, I guess you could call it. But I know I mentioned it that I missed the entire game because of I had family in town, and we had an obligation that was indirectly and directly related to my father. So I missed the whole game, and not that the outcome was ever in doubt, really.
Right.
But I imagine the third quarter of that game was relatively unpleasant for him.
Well, and if you remember correctly too, he had house guests too. So not only was he melting down, but you had Raj melting down, and then Colby was there. He was melting down, and I think the two other guys that were there from the comment section were also dog fans as well. So
Was Colby wearing his purple watch?
you know what? I don't even know if he was or not. I don't even know.
I don't know. I saw highlights of the game. I saw a highlight reel of the game and so on. I appreciated the fact that they got down 28-3 and just didn't roll over and die. I didn't think they were actually going to make the comeback all the way. I mean, Georgia's just too loaded. But
Right.
I really appreciated the fact that they didn't roll over and die. They tried to fight, and I appreciated that. I mean, it does show that they're buying into the coach. And Pizza Woman, I do not know where everybody is. I mean, sometimes it'd be like that. Some days I get 40 people in here, and some days I get 6. But I don't care. I'll talk anyway.
You do you. You just keep doing you. That's all you need to do. Worry.
Yeah, and did you see that we unloaded Brandon Cox from our team? The transfer we got from Georgia, the 5-star, we kicked him off the team. Yeah.
Wait.
One too many.
Wait,
stupid, what? Yeah, we kicked him off the team a couple of either yesterday or a day before. We kicked he's probably our best linebacker, and we just dismissed him. One too many stupid moves.
What was the reasoning?
Well, I think I know he attacked a Georgia player at some point.
Oh, okay. So I mean, it wasn't like for something insignificant, I guess.
No, wait a minute. Steve says YouTube bad at sending out notifications. No shit. CJ, good to see you, man. I think it was just that was the straw that broke the camel's back, because according to Napier, it wasn't just that thing. It was an accumulation of situations. But yeah, they kicked him out. So
wow. Did you happen to see Uncle Lou's music video?
I saw the one where he was superimposed over some Tennessee guy, doing something akin to ear homicide. I mean, that was horrible. The man should be arrested for that. But I know I saw a notification that he was going to release a music video today. I didn't know if that happened yet or not.
Oh, so you haven't seen? Well, he released one like right before, like I think it was Friday, before the Georgia Florida game, called Sunbelt Billy. You haven't seen that one?
Oh yeah. No, I didn't. What was I doing on Friday? I saw the notification for that, and I made a note to go back and watch it, and then I never did. So
Okay. Well, you should take a gander at it when you have the time.
why am I in it?
No. I mean, it's a music video. No, you're not in it. It's going platinum. It's going platinum.
I've been thrown into a couple of music videos out here before, and
Oh yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
They weren't very flattering towards me. I mean, I'm not a horrible looking guy. I don't have horrible opinions, but for some reason, I get thrown into these videos, and it's like, it don't make me look good.
Well, hey, it could be worse. I mean, you could be getting troll accounts made about you that that don't definitely paint you in the brightest light.
Well, I've had some troll accounts that didn't, I mean, they weren't horrible. I think the most offensive one was Hyundai Driver and a couple others like that. No, you and Lou have received your fair share of seriously bad trolls.
Yes.
Lou more than you even, but I just don't understand why they attack you. You're relatively no, not relatively. I mean, you're inoffensive. I mean, you don't do anything that pisses people off that I know of.
I mean, I try to stay neutral as much as possible, but just being associated with said person, I guess puts me in the spotlight. So, what are you gonna do?
Grin and bear it, I guess.
I guess so. I mean, I was warned. I was warned, so I can't really say that I'm surprised at all.
I know you were warned. I was one of the people that warned you.
You were very much so one of the people that warned me.
I think I put it very succinctly when I said being trolled on this platform is a sexually transmitted disease.
Yep, I think that is right. I think that's right. I think those were the exact words that you did use.
Which made you laugh, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it did. It still makes me laugh thinking about that.
Digits is here, but guess who else is here? The Voice.
Uh-oh.
No, he's pissed at somebody. The Champ. Should have been two-time champ, but never mind. What's going on, Brett? You do not look happy, even though you won.
Been enjoying the sophistication of the college football playoff ranking committee.
You know what? For a minute there, I thought it was something that I did, and I was afraid for myself. I haven't seen. Well, no, okay. I haven't seen the logic or explanation of the ranking committee. The only thing I saw was Tennessee was ranked first. I forgot who was second. Georgia third. Was it Clemson fourth?
Clemson four.
Clemson four. Michigan 5, Alabama 6. So that must mean Ohio State is second.
Yeah, which I'm okay with the top 3, but the rest of that stuff is just nonsense.
I'm not really okay with Tennessee being ranked ahead of Georgia because I don't think Tennessee has as good a series of wins as Georgia.
Well, I'm okay. I can see how you could make an argument based off of strength of schedule and whatnot. I can honestly understand why Georgia would be ranked number 3. I get it. What I cannot understand for the life of me is how in the world you put Clemson at number 4 over Michigan. I cannot fathom that. Can't. Because if you look at the remaining strength of schedule, Michigan's going to have to play Ohio State.
Right.
So that's a much stronger schedule than what Clemson has left. So basically what they're saying is that if Clemson wins out, which they likely will, they're guaranteed a spot in the playoff, which I disagree with because I think Michigan's a better team. So apparently,
you may be surprised then too, Saleen, that that Uncle Lou actually put Tennessee number 1 on his poll on his rankings.
Yeah, that would surprise me.
Yeah, he did. He put Tennessee number 1, Georgia number 2 on his rankings.
Well, what's the logic there? Is it that Tennessee beat more top 25 teams than Georgia?
Why is Georgia or why is Tennessee ranked over Georgia, or why do both me and Lou agree that they should be ranked over? Is that what you're asking?
Well, either one is a good question, but I'll take the answer to both.
Well, I can't.
I was trying to figure that out. Why is Tennessee ranked ahead of Georgia?
Well, I mean, if you look at Tennessee's schedule, Tennessee's had I won't say not a terrible schedule, not a great schedule, not a terrible schedule. I think their schedule, you could argue, is harder than Georgia's because they had to play an Alabama team that is ranked higher than they are. Last year's runner-up, and then they got to play this year's defending champion. They had to play against a Heisman winning quarterback in Bryce Young, and then they got to play against a national championship winning quarterback in Stetson Bennett. So I could see that their schedule is harder, even though they haven't played Georgia yet. They do have a harder schedule. Georgia doesn't have two teams like that. You can make an argument for Oregon, maybe, but it's too early in the season. So I think that based off of how many points they've scored per game and the strength of schedule they have, I can see how you could put them up there. And I would argue that Hendon Hooker is a much better quarterback overall than Stetson Bennett. And if you had Stetson Bennett, if you had him at Georgia, Georgia would destroy everybody.
Well, let me ask the pertinent. Now, if I ask Lou, he would say no immediately, but Lou is Lou. But let me ask you: are you worried about this Saturday?
Am I worried about what? This game?
Are you worried about the game?
Not at all.
No,
not even a little.
Is it because it's a home game or?
There's more than one factor. But to boil it down to the simple stuff, I don't feel like they beat Alabama. I feel like Alabama beat themselves. That's one thing. Number two, they played in Neyland, and Neyland was extraordinarily loud.
Right.
They've had 3 games where they've won by 7 points or less. Georgia hasn't had one game, and that was against Missouri.
All right, fellas, I'm gonna head into the grocery store. I don't want to. Yeah, I'm not gonna linger in the grocery store with you guys. I know how loud it's gonna get. So, but I will be listening. Thanks for having me on, Saleen.
Hey, good seeing you, BA.
Yeah, good to see y'all.
Always a pleasure, BA. I'll text you later.
Yes, that's fine. So you text me anytime you need to. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye. See ya. And the battle lady.
Yeah, she's awesome, dude. So to get back to the football aspect of it, this is going to be played in Sanford Stadium.
Right.
And Kirby Smart, if anybody knows or not, Kirby Smart specifically asked the fans to come out and be loud and said if you left there with a voice, you weren't yelling loud enough. He's never done that.
I saw that headline, yeah.
And Kirby Smart has a lot of the fans respect him quite a bit. So I would imagine that place is going to be extraordinarily loud. If Georgia's defense is better than Alabama's defense, and Alabama, despite setting a school record of penalties in a game, despite having given up committed penalties at key moments, it's one thing to commit a penalty when it doesn't hurt you. Like if you do a false start and then you get a first down, that penalty really didn't hurt you too much. But to commit a pass interference in the end zone that takes away an interception, that's terrible. To commit a penalty that negates a 30-yard run and then commit another one behind it and then commit another one right behind it to back yourself up to a goal line and then have to run around to scramble to escape the safety, those kind of penalties are momentum breakers. And they absolutely destroy field position and things like that. And those were the type of penalties that were really hurting Alabama. Georgia is one of the least penalized teams in the country. I don't see any of the same factors going to play in effect against Georgia. Alabama still almost won that game. Think about that. They gave up all of those. They had all of those problems, gave Tennessee all those advantages, and they still almost won. Georgia is so good of an offense right now that there's been 2 games that they have committed 3 turnovers on and still won by 17 plus points in both of those games. That is an incredible offense.
It's good that when you have an offense that can overcome a lot of mistakes. That is true.
If you couple in those factors, that should be enough for Georgia to win the game. Then you start looking at the fact that Alabama is a very strong. Tennessee is very strong in the second quarter. Their second quarter is their best quarter of their games, right?
Right.
So whenever you're looking at when do they get the majority of their points, they're getting the majority of their points in the second quarter. Now, if you look at whenever, excuse me a second, how Georgia performs in the second quarter. Give me a second here. I got to find it real quick. I actually have the stat. So out of the 8 games Georgia has played, they gave up 13 points in the second quarter to Missouri, Georgia's worst game. Georgia's second worst game, they gave up 10 points in the second quarter against Kent. After that, it's been 3 points to Florida, 3 points to Oregon, and then 0 to Samford, 0 to South Carolina, 0 to Vanderbilt, and 0 to Auburn. This is not a team that you're just going to run out there and run up the points on in any one given quarter. They start to fade late in the games. So whenever they are in, let me go back here. When you're looking at a team in the, let me see, let me back it up. How do they do whenever they're playing in? Let's see.
How you doing, Ballard?
I'm fine, man. Just living life.
So Tennessee, they scored 6 points in the fourth quarter. LSU, they scored 7 points in the fourth quarter against Ball. They had to score 18 against Alabama to win. They scored 7 against Kentucky, 7 against Pitt, and then 7 against UTM. If you're not able to finish games strong against teams like Georgia, you're going to struggle. Now, to add even more to it, whenever Tennessee played Alabama, they had to do everything they could to win that game. They played they played their best plays, they played their best players, they played everybody they was drawing up plays in the dirt to come up with some way to beat Alabama. They have laid all their cards on the table. If you don't think Kirby Smart and company hasn't come up with a way to defeat all of that by now, I would be highly surprised. On top of all of that, Georgia hasn't played its best plays. Georgia has better defensive backs and cornerbacks than Alabama, so they're not going to run down the field and score on Georgia that way. Georgia in big games doesn't look to go out there and run up the scoreboard and get into a shootout. Georgia likes to play it tight. So if you're looking in the last national championship, Georgia was perfectly fine winning that game 26-18. They kept it low scoring. Go back and look whenever Georgia played Cincinnati in the
Peach Bowl,
one of the playoff games. We kept that game close because we were talented. Georgia wins with a field goal at the end. You go back and look at the way Georgia played Clemson at the season opener of last year. They played that game very low scoring, very tight. So in these bigger games, it seems to be that Georgia likes to play conservative. Georgia completely outclassed Oregon, blew them out of the water, and then last year we completely outclassed and blew Michigan out of the water. But I think Georgia's game plan is going to be to go in and slow everything way down and then force Tennessee to play a different style of football. They're not going to go out there and just zip down the field against Georgia. They're not going to be able to run the ball against Georgia. Nobody's rushed for over, I think, 185 yards against Georgia since Kirby Smart's been there. And if you're a run-heavy team, which, believe it or not, Tennessee is, they predicate everything off the run. They got some good passing, don't get me wrong, but they predicate everything off the run. That's what allows them to open up the pass game.
Georgia's so you're not worried about a dual-threat quarterback?
Who, Hendon Hooker?
He is a dual threat.
To who? Not Georgia.
No, he's a run or pass quarterback.
No, I'm not.
You got to keep somebody. You got to keep somebody there to keep the linebackers honest.
Georgia's got enough 4- and 5-star talent in that second in the secondary to be able to keep any quarterback honest.
Okay.
You look at
it was just a question, I mean.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not worried about that at all. And the reason I'm not worried about it is because if you go back and you look at Georgia has had to deal with dual threat quarterbacks in the past, and Georgia's contained them all.
I mean, the time for Florida fans to trash talk either Georgia or Tennessee is over. that's weeks ago. We're done with that shit. We can't trash talk nobody. So we're concentrating on can we embarrass Jimbo Fisher in his own house? That's the only thing we're worried about right now. Which I would like to see. No, ain't no Florida fan going to sit here and talk to a Georgia fan or a Tennessee fan and try and troll them about this and that. We lost that opportunity, last week and a couple weeks ago. The only thing that I'm thinking about is it would be funny at a certain level if Tennessee beat all three of their rivals in a single year. I can't even remember the last time that happened.
So let me give you some numbers here. You're right.
Funny,
but
who knows?
Let me give you some numbers here.
Brett, 1 second. There's a big overall problem with what you're saying.
I'm getting a lot of feedback from either you or Ballard. I don't know who needs to be muted.
It's Ballard. I heard it while you were on earlier, or while he was on earlier.
Yep.
But there's a big overall problem with your theory about this game. Kirby wants certain personnel in on first down, second down, and third down. And if he had his way, he would swap it literally every single play. He's not going to be able to do that against Tennessee. So you're going to end up with some mismatches against that defense that's not going to favor Georgia.
Right, but it's not going to be every possession. I mean, that happens in every single game, but I can also guarantee you that what has been said is that I'm sure that we already know who the referees are going to be for this game. And they have already shown them the tape of the Alabama game where Alabama was not given time to get players on the field during substitutions properly. I guarantee you that's not going to happen in the Georgia game, especially not in Athens. So,
well, you can only substitute if Tennessee substitutes it.
That is correct. That is correct. And
they're not going to.
They're gonna have to sub because by the time they get to the second or third quarter, they start getting winded. They start getting tired. If you look at Tennessee scoring in the third quarter, that's their worst quarter, and it's because they're tired. All Georgia has to do, all Georgia really has to do is survive. What's that?
I said, why would they be tired coming out after halftime in the third quarter? That doesn't make sense.
If you go look at their score, you go look at their record. Like if you pull up their stats, like their third quarter is their worst scoring quarter, with the exception of maybe the fourth. UTM, they only scored 6 points. Pitt, they scored 3. Florida, they scored 7. Against Kentucky, they scored 10. Against Alabama, that was their best quarter. They scored 15, but that was due to turnovers. Against Ball State, that was their second to worst quarter. And against LSU, that was their best quarter at 14. But for the most part, they're not coming out like they do in the second quarter. Tennessee does not have the depth. They just don't. And for people to,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for them to, and here's why, is because they come out tired and they survive the end of games. And it's because they're playing this high-powered offense and people try to get into a boat race with them. And I'm telling you right now, if it hadn't have been, if Alabama would have committed 3 less penalties, they win that game. The pass interference in the end zone, the big hole that brings the game, brings back the big run from Jahmyr Gibbs. And then there was another one that was I think it was either a pass interference or a hold call on third down where they picked up a first down. He ended up having to punt it right after that. But other than that, they'd have won that game. So 3 penalties made a difference. Georgia's not going to go out there and give up 17 penalties. It's not going to happen.
You're damn right, K-Dog.
No, but Stetson Bennett absolutely can come out there and throw that game away.
Well,
And
he
he's
can.
proven
Don't
that
get me
at
wrong.
times this year.
I'm not saying he can or can't. But what I'm saying is that this same quarterback, that even though, we see Stetson Bennett do Stetson Bennett things. We see Stetson Bennett do dumb things from time to time. Stetson Bennett is a quarterback who does and has won a national championship. He has brought Georgia from behind to win big games. So you can't discount that. You can't throw that away. So can he go out there and throw the game away? Absolutely.
How many games has he
gotten better?
Wait a minute. How many games has Stetson Bennett brought Georgia back from a double-digit deficit to win the game? That's never happened.
Well, that's because we have a stellar defense. So we haven't needed that to happen.
Okay, so Stetson has not led your team to victory. Your defense absolutely has.
Well, if a quarterback can throw a game away, can't he win the game?
If he has the talent, and Stetson Bennett doesn't have that talent.
So Stetson Bennett doesn't have the talent. Stetson Bennett doesn't have the talent, but he's got better stats than Bryce Young. Is that correct?
Stetson Bennett isn't going to win you a game, but if he goes out there turning the ball over, he can very quickly lose you one.
And I brought that up earlier. I said Georgia's had 3 games where they've turned the ball over 3 times, and we still won by almost 20 points in both games.
And now Sanchez is here. There goes the neighborhood.
I mean, I agree with your overall point that Georgia's probably going to win the game. I think Tennessee's a bigger threat than you think.
I don't think Tennessee is a walk in the park. Don't get me wrong. I think Tennessee will probably score more points against Georgia than anybody has all season. But I don't think Tennessee is going to break 24 points. Let me explain why.
I keep thinking about Georgia's defense, and that defense is a lockdown defense.
Let me explain something from my point of view. In almost every single game, I won't say every game, but I'll say nearly every single game. Let's just actually do this. Let me go to team stats, and that'll just save me the headache. Then Ball State time of possession. Ball State had longer time of possession against them, so Ball State had more clock, had the ball longer. Tennessee did have the ball longer against Pitt, but that was mainly due to overtime. Against Akron, Akron had the ball longer. Against Florida, Florida had the ball longer.
How is that possible?
Because they score very quickly. LSU had the ball longer. I know Alabama had the ball longer against Tennessee. Yeah, they had the ball 15 minutes longer.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about against Tennessee or against Georgia?
Against Tennessee. So pretty much every single game, maybe with the exception of the Pitt game, Tennessee goes out and scores quickly and gets off the field. And then these other teams, they try to manage to get down the field, but they struggle. Georgia's not going to have that problem. Georgia's going to be able to absolutely smother Tennessee. Tennessee's not used to hanging onto the ball on offense long. They're used to going down the field very quickly. If Georgia goes out there and gets let's just say Georgia gets 3 and outs, Tennessee's done. They're used to scoring on almost every single possession. They cannot stop anybody with the exception of Kentucky. Kentucky was able to hold on to the ball, but Kentucky was not able to score. Georgia's not going to have that problem. Georgia's going to get their points, just like Alabama got their points.
What's up, Hoagie?
So whenever Tennessee runs up against the best defense they've seen all season in an extremely loud, hostile environment, and they go 3 and out just a couple of times, Georgia's going to have that game in the bag.
Hey, Brett,
I don't see any other way.
Well, okay. That's why I like Big Dog Brett on here. It gives good analysis.
I don't know if it's great statistical analytical data, but it's certainly passionate.
Hey,
Well,
Brett,
passion, yeah, but also, passion backed up by something more than blowhard and bullshit.
Yeah,
hey,
I do a
Brett,
fair
you
amount of
know,
that too.
Which there's plenty of people in our little TTC here who got nothing more than blowhard and bullshit. Always appreciate some facts.
Well,
hey, guys, can you,
the thing that gets me is that if you look at these teams, they'll put up 300 or 400 yards of Akron put up what almost 300 yards of offense. Akron put up almost 300 yards against Tennessee. Florida put up almost 600. LSU put up 500.
And kept it close for a good chunk of the game too.
Yeah, I mean Alabama put up 570. UT Martin put 400 yards on Tennessee. To me, if these teams are putting 400 and 500 yards, what's Georgia going to do to them? The answer is whatever they want. Except Georgia's not going to go down the field and try to score in a blaze and just run down the field. Georgia's going to be highly interested in going very methodically down the field, getting a touchdown, and then playing defense and making Tennessee go down the field. I don't know that Tennessee can do it.
Well, here's the counter, maybe a counter argument to that. Can Tennessee do it? We don't know. But then again, Tennessee hasn't had to do it yet. So we don't know that they can or they can't.
Whenever I think that, and I'm not trying to beat up on Florida, but it's the only team that we have both played.
Go ahead.
Georgia allowed fewer points
all the time.
Georgia allowed fewer points from Florida and scored more points than Tennessee.
It's true.
And we did it at a neutral site. Y'all played Tennessee at Neyland Stadium.
And it was close. And Florida, but there is the thing about that third quarter. Florida did manage to, stop Georgia from scoring for a little while, just a little while, and scored some points on them. So Georgia has a bit of vulnerability. Tennessee might look at that.
I think that every team has a little bit of vulnerability.
Yeah, but Tennessee could look at the Florida film and say, we could maybe exploit here, and here.
If I was Tennessee,
they will, but they could.
If I was Tennessee right now, the last thing I would have wanted to see was my team ranked as the number one in the college football playoff committee ranking. That's the last thing I would have wanted to see, because I can tell you what it does to teams, because it happened to Georgia. You get this big head.
But then again, Georgia is a defending national champion. They have a target on their back every week.
Right. But last year, whenever Georgia was ranked number one and we go into the SEC championship game and get absolutely trounced by Alabama, even the players come back and said, well, because we were ranked number one, we thought we had it. And I think the same thing is going to happen to Tennessee. I think Tennessee is about to get embarrassed.
I want to ask real quick. Want to ask Brett real quick his thoughts on the Alabama LSU game, with LSU being ranked where they are, and they're only scoring 35 points a game and giving up 21.
LSU's overrated.
Oh, I know.
I wish they were overrated some more, so we could have beat them.
I really, really think that the true testament to who you have in LSU is the game against Auburn.
Okay.
And I think that the game against Florida tells you a little bit. Ole Miss fell apart. If you watch that game, you got Lane Kiffin coming out. Weird. It was just a weird game. I think Alabama's fixing to go in here and put a hurting on LSU. I think Nick Saban's about to welcome Brian Kelly to the SEC in a big way. And I think that after next week, I think Alabama will be back in the top four.
All
I
right.
hope Florida recruits defense this year.
What's that?
I said I hope Florida recruits heavy on defense.
Yeah.
You need to worry about Billy Napier recruiting, period. He's losing left and right.
I'm not worried about that right now.
Two things are going to
You've
happen.
already had 2 decommits, and you lost your biggest recruit on the board to us.
Yep. He's right.
I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it because, it was inevitable we were going to lose some big games and lose recruits. We need to start shoring the team up, and then, the chips fall where they may. But you can't have one without the other in both directions. We need defense.
I agree. I agree with Fishing Football completely. Billy Napier needs to hire an offensive coordinator and probably give up calling plays too.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's a
I
fact.
agree. I heard Fishing Football say that, and I agree with him.
He is completely in over his head, especially in the SEC conference.
He's trying to be the head coach, be the offensive coordinator, and
Be the head recruiter.
and be the quarterback's coach.
Yep.
He's putting too much on himself.
And nobody can do that. Nobody.
No.
It's
Not at this level.
No. Maybe you might be able to do that. You can do that in the Atlantic Conference or the Southern Mountain Conference or the North Pond Water Conference.
Well, I don't even have a problem with him calling plays because, Lane Kiffin gets away with that, but he still has an offensive coordinator to deal with the game plan and help deal with the rest of, the offense. He's not taking all of that on himself.
I'd rather Napier make these mistakes in his first year than in years 2, 3, or whatever. I'd rather he make those mistakes now because this first year, Napier wasn't going to do a hell of a lot anyway. I think anyone with a brain could acknowledge that. But he's making those mistakes now. Hopefully, he's a smart enough man to correct them.
Well, here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that. It's not his first year as a head coach.
No, it's not. But his first year as a head coach at this level.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're going to have very much success at any level trying to do all that.
No, you're not. But like I said, let him make those mistakes in his first year at Florida instead of subsequent years. Maybe he'll learn something after this season is over. If he's a smart man. Now, I don't know if he's smart enough.
Billy Napier is about a half a season away from being Brian Harsin. He is in completely over his head. He doesn't have the support of his team. He has a losing record. The only thing he doesn't have is a big buyout.
Well, then we'll start over again in a year or two.
Well, the problem is that who are you going to hire for that job? Because you guys have been through 4 coaches in the last 7 or 8 years, something like that.
They're on coach number 5 in the last 10 years.
Yeah,
you're quickly fixing to become Tennessee, Miami,
Florida State.
That's the path you're headed down. Well, Florida State, they nipped that in the bud. They were smart enough.
All I can tell you is you guys better get it figured out before Nick Saban retires. Because if you don't have a strong program by the time Nick Saban retires, Georgia is going to absorb 95% of the talent on both the field and in the coaching staffing room over to Georgia when he retires. And if he does, you guys will never see the light of day again.
That's just false.
Then where would you go as a head coach in the SEC, or excuse me, where would you go as one of the most dominant programs in the SEC if Nick Saban leaves? Because you're not going to stay.
Oh, they'll end up all over the country.
The vast majority of the talent will immediately go to Georgia.
No, they won't. Stop it.
All right, okay. Well, let me ask you a question then. Let me ask you a question.
Alabama has a history of that. Georgia has absolutely no history of being able to do that.
Except that when you look at the recruiting rankings, Georgia's ranked higher than every other SEC team besides Alabama, and in some years, Alabama.
And there's a reason other schools have been able to come in, and I've gone into this ad nauseum too. Nick Saban had his success because he had no resistance in Florida. Dabo has had his success. Kirby has had his success because there has been no resistance in the state of Florida.
So you're saying that Georgia's success is because there's no resistance in the state of Florida?
That's a big portion of it, yes.
So then how could Alabama and Dabo?
I said it counted
both
for them as well.
What I'm saying though is that your comment is confusing me, because if Dabo is still at the school that he's a head coach at and he's won a national championship, and Nick Saban's at the school he's at and he continues to win national championships, and both of those guys are recruiting out of Florida, how is it possible for Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson to all recruit out of Florida but yet be uncontested?
Because Miami's been through a coaching carousel, Florida's constantly through a coaching carousel, and Florida State was well on their way. We'll see if they've ended that ride or not.
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is that if Georgia is getting players out of Florida uncontested, how can Alabama get players out of Florida uncontested, and how can Clemson get players out of Florida uncontested?
No, I'm saying all three of those programs are having success recruiting that state because the big three in the state have been down.
Oh, I see what he's trying to say. Yeah, okay.
Are you saying that the reason that Georgia has had the recruiting success it has is because of players out of Florida?
That's a big portion of it, yes.
Okay.
You have gotten some big players out of the state of Florida, Brett.
Well, I'm pulling it up right now because I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. So
I'm not saying that Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson have cleaned out the state of Florida, but you did get some, I know you gotten some big.
All three of them recruit the state of Florida heavily. To say otherwise is just foolish.
Okay, the number one recruit at Georgia this year was Mikael Williams and Malachi Starks, both out of the state of Georgia. 3, 4, and 5 were out of Florida. Number 5 was California. 6, North Carolina. Number 7 was Florida. 8, Mississippi. 9, Texas. 10, Georgia. 11, Georgia. 12, Georgia. 13, Georgia. 14, Georgia. 15, Georgia. And then we get down to another Florida, then a Georgia, then a Florida, then a Georgia, then a Florida, then a Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Australia.
Yeah. Australia.
Way to grow up.
Kicker.
So a big chunk of that is from 2 states, Florida and Georgia.
And Texas. But yeah.
You had like 3 or 4 from Texas. They still beat out Florida and Georgia. Florida and Georgia still beat them out by a pretty good margin.
So if we go to the SEC and we look at
still a good chunk of players out of Florida, though.
So Alabama's players.
Yes,
Here's
like
Alabama's players. Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Virginia, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, Alabama, Florida, Ohio, Georgia, Louisiana, Kansas. Seems like Alabama's recruiting out of Georgia. And then if we look at, let's go to the ACC and we look.
So are you really going to, hang on, you're really going to make the argument that the majority of the biggest players Nick Saban's had through his tenure at Alabama have not come from the state of Florida? That's really the argument you're going to make?
I didn't say that.
You might can pull up a year here and there where it's not the case. I'm saying overwhelming majority. We're talking.
I just pulled last year. That's all I did was pull last year. And as of Clemson last year, it looks like they have 2 players out of their entire recruiting class that come out of Clemson. Come out of Florida.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying that Georgia doesn't recruit in Florida, and I'm tell you what. Here's what I'll do. I'll go to Florida and I'll see if Florida recruits in Georgia. Let's see.
Well, everybody recruits nationwide. Nobody's arguing that point.
Okay. So I'm confused. It seems to me that Georgia gets a lot of Georgia players and Florida players because they're close, not just because it's Florida. There's talented players in Florida and Alabama, but Georgia focuses primarily on Georgia. Top 2 players in the state. The number 2 player in the state and the number 4 player in the state came to Georgia from Georgia. Do we have Florida players? Absolutely. But we also have players from California. I mean, we have players from Texas.
Well, Miami's got players from California. Which point?
You're the one. You brought up the recruiting in the state of Florida.
So you're making the argument that California and Florida are not the two biggest recruiting states in the country.
I didn't say that at
Because they by
all.
far are.
You just said that without recruits from the state of Florida, that Georgia, Clemson, and Alabama wouldn't be successful.
A good portion of their talent has come from those states.
Last year, Clemson pulled one player out of Florida? One. Let's check 2021. 2021. 1, 2, 3 players out of their entire recruiting class came from there.
Hoagie, why are you and Pizza One fighting? I mean, stop it already.
So they had 3 players out of last year's class, 4 players out of the year before. So Clemson is not, in the past 3 years, not heavily recruiting Florida at all. I guarantee. I mean, I'll give you the fact that Georgia does recruit in Florida, but the majority of our players come from Georgia.
Well, and I also know Clemson recruits Georgia heavily. I mean, they're 2 out of their last 3 starting quarterbacks have all been out of Georgia.
Well, you can't blame Georgia. You can't blame Clemson for that, and I don't even blame the players for that. Georgia's been terrible with what they've done with quarterbacks. It's one of my biggest.
Well, no. I'm just saying even Dabo recruits state of Georgia too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't blame him. But what I'm saying is that we have players on our staff, we have coaches on our staff, which is Kirby Smart, Scott Cochran, and a few other coaches that came from Alabama. And whenever those coaches were at Alabama, Alabama was much more dominant than they are now. I really honestly think because of the relationships that Scott Cochran and Kirby Smart had with those coaches when they were dominant at Alabama, if Nick Saban leaves in any time soon, they're going to come to Georgia. Georgia is the most similar program right now to Alabama than any other program in the country.
Hey, Rick, put down the crack pipe, man. It's bad for you.
But that in no ways guarantees an Alabama like run or dominance.
I'm sorry, it broke up on the end here. That in no way guarantees what?
An Alabama like run.
I would stand the reason that if Alabama was in the equation right now entirely, Georgia would be absolutely dominant. Because the way that I look at it is that the reason that the players that play for Alabama that are not from Alabama, the reason that the players that go to Alabama, that want to play at Alabama, they go there because they want to be a national championship contender, they want to get developed into NFL players, and they want to play for coaches that have multiple national championships. The most team like that is Georgia. There's no other team that's even close. So because of that, the recruiting connections they have, the similarity to the way the programs are run, the coaching staff that's nearly interchangeable, the facilities that Georgia has they rival pretty much anybody in the country. The conference that we play in, the fact we're a dominant feature right now, the fact that we're at top of the recruiting rankings already. I think that if Nick Saban was to retire tomorrow, Georgia would absorb the vast majority of the top tier talent. Now, you would have guys that would go to Oklahoma and Texas and Ohio State and Michigan and Florida and Miami. I get it. But the vast majority of that would be immediately absorbed by Georgia just due to the similarities.
Well, and
BBD
in the house.
I don't necessarily agree with that either, because as terrible as I keep hearing Miami is, I mean, they don't have a class outside of the top 15. So even when that team is absolutely terrible, they're still bringing in top-tier talent.
I'm not saying that Miami doesn't have top-tier talent now, but it's difficult to recruit. If you're if you're a 5-star, genuine, best of the best player in the country, and you have a choice between going to Georgia or going to Miami, and you want to go to the NFL, you're going to look much harder at that decision to lean towards Georgia than Miami.
Okay, well, I mean that argument would hold water, except for last week, the number 2 player in the country picked Miami.
No, that argument holds a lot of water because Georgia just put 15 guys in the NFL last year.
Okay, name a draft in the last 30 years that doesn't have a Miami player in it.
Name one in the last 30 that doesn't have a Georgia player in it.
Sound pretty interchangeable to me.
If we want to talk about sheer numbers, is that what we want to talk about?
That's not. You said way to the NFL. There's not a draft in the last 30 years that doesn't have a player from either team.
That's true, but there's also been players that have went to, I don't know, Rice that have went to the pros. That doesn't mean just because your team can put a player in the pros that it's equivalent to a Georgia or Alabama or Clemson or Ohio or Michigan.
Okay, well, so you're making the case then for top tier talent, guys that are successful in the NFL. Well, there's only one school with more NFL Hall of Famers than Miami, and that's Notre Dame.
That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that as of current, which teams are putting the most players in the NFL? Because if you're putting a sixth of your roster in the NFL in one season, your scholarship roster, you're putting a sixth or a seventh of it in the NFL. That's a lot more than other teams like Miami or.
Well, no, right now Alabama and Ohio State make up the majority of NFL rosters. If you just want to go by sheer numbers, I think those are probably the top 2 right now.
I think Notre Dame's number 1 right now with the most players in the NFL.
I mean, they may be. I'm sure Notre Dame's in there as well. I would have put them in the top 5, obviously.
From what I'm looking at, let's see here. I got too much stuff going on my screen here. Hold on. Back this up. There we go. So if we look at overall throughout all of history, and let me see what the date on this article is. This is over at Sports Illustrated. This is as of May 1st, 2022. Find it. That's obviously not right. I can't use that. I'm going to try to go back. It does something different. What is going on with this thing?
Blame the Google machine.
Yeah, well, it's one of those sites when you click on it and you try to go back to the other screen, it forwards you to somewhere else.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to find something that if I send somebody to it, it's not going to be, a waste of somebody's time.
I forgot. I turned my microphone on.
Yeah, turn your microphone on. It helps we can hear you.
Yeah, it does help.
Ballard, you're allowed to. You're allowed to talk, Ballard. You don't have to just sit there.
I've just been listening to Brett go on about Georgia and recruiting and all
but
that.
Slim, on a real, please, are you going to beat Florida State for me this week? Please do this for me.
It's a possibility. It's a possibility.
All right, so here's what we got. I found it. This is on actually NCAA.com. So this is an article that was wrote April of 2020. So there's been a couple of years in between now and then. Total NFL draft picks since 2000. Ohio State 141. Alabama 127. LSU 126. Miami 119. Florida 117. Georgia 115. USC 112. Florida State 109. Oklahoma 101. So that's from 2000 to 2020. So whatever Georgia has put in the last 3 years versus whatever Miami has put in the last 3 years is the difference, which is probably significant.
Oh yeah, in the last 3 years, I mean, nobody's making an argument that in the last 3 years, Georgia's obviously done better than Miami. I mean, nobody's making that argument.
The catastrophe of the whole thing is that, you know, growing up, I love watching Miami. They were an electric team, but they can't seem to get it figured out.
Because CJ, I hate Florida State more than any other team in the in Division One. Anybody beat Florida State, I'm happy.
I mean, the problem at Miami isn't hard to figure out at all. You've had 6 head coaches since you joined the ACC. It's pretty obvious.
Well, we tried to tell y'all not to hire Mark Richt. Y'all didn't listen to us.
Mark Richt won, 8, 9, and 10 games and then retired because of Parkinson's. Mark Richt wasn't the problem. I mean, that was just kind of unfortunate that he had to retire when he did, but it is what it is.
I'm going to tell you like this from being a Mark Richt fan, and I am a Mark Richt fan. Mark Richt was a coach that was always going to be good but never going to be great. And he would beat all the teams that he was supposed to beat with the exception of 1 or 2 a year. And anytime he played a top 10 team, he'd get his tail kicked. And so you win 8, 9, 10 games a year, and then you'd end up losing the big games.
Mark Richt blew out a top 5 team while at Miami.
He did it one time?
I mean, absolutely. Well, he only had a chance. He only played 2.
So he lost 50% of the top 10 games he played.
Really wasn't there long enough to get what he needed to build.
Well,
I mean, like I said, that was unfortunate circumstances with the Parkinson's and everything.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a terrible thing because he's a great person. I mean,
oh yeah,
he really was.
Now, I think there is something to be said, and history kind of bears this out. There are schools where it's easier to stack up multiple titles, and there's schools where it's harder to stack up multiple titles. I mean, Oklahoma and Georgia have kind of been in that same boat where for a lot of years they've been really good, but couldn't stack up the titles the way Nebraska used to, or Alabama does, or Miami did in their run.
Right. One of the things that I looked at,
I do think Mark Richt could have had more success long term at Miami than he did at Georgia. I think that's absolutely a possibility.
Yeah. The thing about Mark Richt is Mark Richt was a good coach, but Mark Richt was never going to get Georgia to a national championship. He was a head coach at Georgia for over a decade. One of the most winningest coaches in history, and had everything as far as all the awards go. But the one thing he had that we didn't want was an empty trophy case.
Yep.
And it just.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of coaches in Georgia. I mean, Georgia's won 4 or 5 in their history. I mean, there's a lot of coaches at Georgia that didn't win titles.
Well, it really depends on how you want to look at things. I sat down and went through it one time and looked at it. Georgia could realistically claim about 6 more national championships. We just don't. I don't know why we don't, but we could. Alabama claims as many as they can.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them Miami doesn't claim either.
I completely agree. I think there's at least 5 y'all could claim that you don't.
I think that's around the number 5 or 6, yeah.
And so,
but I mean, you know what? That little run that they did and won 5 titles in it, that's nothing to sneeze at. I'm not mad about that.
I mean, Miami. Here's the thing that irritates me about Miami. You guys are in some of the best recruiting ground in the country. I mean, you guys need your own damn stadium. Y'all need I don't not to be rude, but the administration needs to quit being cheap, and they need to buy a real damn stadium and real facilities. Quit worrying about a coach that's trying to help them play a football game in a busted up Miami stadium.
Facilities, yes, and that's something I've talked about ad nauseum. They got what was really bad for Miami is they got away with having a whole lot of success and being cheap doing it.
That's a fact. At the times when you guys heyday, when you guys are absolutely killing it and dragging the money in. There's no damn reason why y'all shouldn't have went and built yourself a $100 million stadium. What's up, Beef?
Well, they didn't have to there for a while because they had the Orange Bowl. That was built for them to play in.
You need, if you're going to be competitive in today's college football recruiting rankings industry repetitively over and over, you have to be able to walk a player in and say, this is what we've got. You can walk out of your dorm. You can walk over here. You can get in a hot tub. You can do all this stuff over here. And then just 15, 20 minutes away is the stadium. We're going to show you all the facilities. Check out this really cool locker room. We're going to walk you out. You're going to have your own personal locker room. We're going to walk you out here on you guys' field. You guys don't have that. And that is embarrassing.
See, I completely disagree. Now, the facilities, I completely agree. And they've already started on a $145 million expansion on the facility they just built a couple of years ago.
Why? Why would you not build a stadium? Why would you not build a stadium?
I don't care about it. There are people trying to. I'm just indifferent about
Coral
it.
Gables is not exactly what I would call flush with land right now.
No, well, you're never going to get one in Coral Gables. That's not going to
Isn't
happen.
there too much going on in Miami too, Slim? Isn't there like so much shit going on in Miami that they're always going to have trouble filling up a stadium? That's the excuse I've always heard.
There's a whole lot more to do in Miami, Florida than there is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I can promise you that.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now that in my humble opinion, and you can make it as humble as you want to, there ain't no shortage of land around there to build on. There's really
there
not.
is in Coral Gables. It's good. If they do build one, which some people are trying to, it's going to be in the city of Miami. It's not going to be on campus. That's never going to happen.
Where is this at? Let me see.
Coral Gables is pretty crowded, and the land that is there is expensive.
Not to mention all them property. Yeah, well, Florida. Not to mention all those old waspy white folks. They ain't gonna have it. They're not gonna have a stadium in Coral Gables.
And you're not gonna drop it down in the middle of Liberty City or something like that. I mean, if you're gonna build a stadium for the Hurricanes that isn't an hour away in in Pishkaville, you're gonna have to put it in a place where people are gonna want to come and feel like their car isn't going to be up on cement blocks at the end of the game, and B, they're not going to get shot or jacked up themselves.
That's hilarious.
Miami, I used to live in Miami a long time ago, and even back then, it was hard to get something big built in Miami. That's why the Orange Bowl stayed as long as it did. The Orange Bowl should have been torn out and redone decades ago before it was finally torn down, because it was old, it was run down, it was inadequate, but nobody could get anything done to either rebuild the Orange Bowl or replace it.
So I'm looking at
a stadium out in the middle of nowhere.
I'm looking at an aerial map right now of Miami Stadium. They have room right next to Ponce de Leon to build about a 500 by 700 foot stadium. Sanford Stadium is 600 by 700.
Thought you were going to say 500 seat stadium.
That's what I thought he was going to say.
They have room right now. They have an open parking lot.
And I come at this. I come at this from just being a fan. I've been to games at the Orange Bowl. I've been to games at Hard Rock. Hard Rock is much nicer and a whole lot more comfortable than the Orange Bowl was. I love the Orange Bowl, but Hard Rock's a nicer stadium, and it's a whole lot more comfortable fan experience. You're not on bleachers. You're in stadium seating. Not really. It's still only about 30, 35 minutes from campus, which is just the same distance the Orange Bowl was, just in a different part of town.
If you guys were to relocate the laboratory school you guys have, you would have room for a 700. We'll even say 700 by 800 foot stadium, which is bigger than Sanford Stadium.
Okay,
So-
but here's one thing you got to remember, Brett. Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Alabama. What do they all got in common?
Fans?
Yeah, work with me, Brett.
They're-
They're all public universities. They can tap into the power of the state and the taxpayer and a little something we call eminent domain if necessary. Miami's a private university. The city's not going to help them. The county's not going to help them. The state's not going to help them. They're going to have to do it on their own. And the developers down in Miami are not going to want to give up the land that you pointed out that might work because they can put something a hell of a lot more long-term profitable on that land than a football stadium.
That land that I'm talking about, that I was just looking at, is already on the campus. It is on the campus. It's just parking lot.
Ponce.
It's next to Ponce de Leon Road.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad.
Well,
okay.
and,
if it's on the campus, that makes it a little easier. But still,
I know
they're going to
this.
have to fund the stadium themselves.
I know this for a fact. Both because the guy that's leading the push now to build another stadium just got told no by the city council in Miami that he can't buy the land because he wanted to buy Tropicana Park. They've been told no.
To buy the land.
Well, hang on. They've been told no in Coral Gables too.
See, it has to be privately funded. It's not going to work doing it as a public project.
Well, not even privately funded.
You wouldn't need to fund it as a public project.
You still have to get permission from the city to build it. And Coral Gables, I know for a fact, has told them no. Because I've read it in the newspaper, when it happened.
See, that's a problem with being a private university is you got an extra couple of hoops to jump through versus a Florida or a Georgia or a Tennessee or an Alabama. You got the power of the state behind you.
They'll never get a permit to build a stadium in Coral Gables.
I mean, Florida, University of Florida just recently redid parts of the swamp. They built in some more seating. They renovated the east side and the west side, concourses and everything. Big project, millions of dollars. All they did was go to the Board of Regents and say, may I? And the Board of Regents or whoever said, yeah, go ahead. And that was all that it took. Miami's got to jump through a hell of a lot more hoops.
Well, I can tell you like this. With the amount of revenue that would bring in, I'm sure the proper hands could be greased to make that happen. There's no reason why. Nobody's going to convince me that there's any good reason why they can't get a stadium.
What about some of those former Miami players that are big time NFL multimillionaires now? Chip in some money, man. Help you.
Not only that, those guys have connections down there. Those guys have.
Of course, that doesn't help the whole permit issue. There's nothing they can do about that. So I kind of see what Slim's talking about there.
A permit being approved by somebody.
Slim will be back in a minute. There he is.
If the right person gets taken to the right lunch, they will approve a permit. That's just the way that goes.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with what you're saying, Brett, that Miami needs to build a stadium, and preferably on campus or damn close to it, and so on. I'm not defending Miami's decision not to do that. I'm just saying that as a private university, they got a few more loopholes to open up and a few more hoops to jump through than a Florida, a Georgia, a Tennessee.
Here's what I'm saying. Yes, they may have more hoops to jump through. I don't even
think it's Miami's decision not to do so. I think they've tried and have just been unsuccessful at it.
I think that when you have boosters that can afford to sign a player to a $9.5 million NIL deal, there's no reason you can't figure out how to get a stadium built.
Well, there's a few more steps in between.
If you have boosters that,
Yes,
that
there
live in
is.
that area that have $9.5 million to give to a player, I can 100% guarantee you that they are rubbing elbows with the elites of Miami. And if they
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
build
you-
that stadium,
Okay, the
they would
same
build it.
the same guy that you're talking about that supposedly cut that $9.5 million check is the same guy the city council told no, you're not building a stadium in Tropicana Park 3 months ago.
Right, but what I'm saying
Exact
is,
same person.
if you change it from building off of the campus to building onto the campus, that's completely different because it's part of a private institution.
But what's surrounding the Miami campus? And are those people going to tolerate a stadium in their hood, if you will?
That's a
Well,
very upper class neighborhood.
You
Right,
already
my-
have
My
you
point
already
is
have
that-
Alex Rodriguez Park. You have Cobb Stadium. You've got stadiums that are already there that they're just not a football capacity one. And
What's the biggest high school in the Coral Gables area? Serious question. I'm not trolling, Slim.
I don't know.
I mean, you have Coral Gables High School.
You got a
And-
lot
and
of high schools in that area. Miami
Yeah.
Miami-Dade is just filthy with high schools of all levels. You know, public, private, small, medium, large, idiotically sized. You know,
I mean, the biggest issue, aside from funding and boostership and all of that, is quite frankly, even if they built a new stadium, are the people going to show up? And that's, again, I'm not trolling. That's a fair question. I mean,
it's an
I
ACC
agree
school.
with you because I mean, people talk about fans not going to Miami games now. Guess what? They didn't sell out every game in the Orange Bowl in 2001 or 2. They just
I
didn't.
did not know that. Well, that may have had something to do with the fact that the Orange Bowl used to be located in a combat zone, but
But
not-
people have been going. Little Havana was a much better part of town in 2001 than it was in 1983.
If you
no,
built
that's a fair point.
now hear me out here. If you built a stadium, let's just say middle of the road, 60,000 people, which is smaller than the stadium you play in now. Okay. I can guarantee you the attendance would go up because people enjoy that college football environment. Because if you look at Miami compared to every other team in the ACC, they have the lowest attendance. And it's not because Miami is the worst team in the ACC, because they're clearly not. They're not even close to being the worst team, right?
I'm actually going to bounce back on that. I think Tech beat.
No. I don't think Miami's the worst team at all. I really don't. I think it's one of the better teams. It's one of the more marketable brands. I think it's a team that's capable of getting good recruits.
No. I'm saying as far as attendance, I think we got Georgia Tech beat. There's like 14 people in that stadium.
It might surprise you to know that Georgia Tech Stadium is 55,000 people, and their average attendance is 92%. It's one of the highest in the ACC.
that's probably tickets sold, though, not actual asses in the seat.
I'm about to say, watch Sea Dog's live streams from that empty stadium.
Well, I'm
There's
just
like
looking
15 people there.
Well, we don't really care if they sit in the stands as long as they buy the tickets, right? Because what we're talking about is revenue. We're not actually talking about people sitting there watching the game. So
This is true.
Fair.
from a revenue standpoint, they sell 92% of their tickets. Virginia is at 70%, and it's Boston College is at 68%. Miami's at 63.5% because nobody wants to go to that damn stadium. It has the lowest attendance in the ACC, and it's
Well,
one
see,
of the
you're
better liked teams.
assuming that it's because that nobody wants to go to that stadium, but you have absolutely zero evidence to back that up. People
Well,
don't go to USC games when they're not any good either.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think that year in, year out, Louisville is a good team?
No, not year in and year out.
Then why do they get 90% capacity average?
Because that's all there is to do in Louisville. I
What
still
about
think that's the biggest problem for Miami is there's
Okay. What about Virginia
too
Tech?
much shit to do.
There just simply is more to do in Miami on a Saturday than go sit and watch a football game with two bad teams.
What about Florida State?
You know, you used to say the same thing about Atlanta. I mean, you had at one time the Falcons, the Hawks, either the Knights, the Thrashers, or whoever in hockey.
I can't even begin to tell
and
you
the
about all of
Braves.
the museums and gallerias and everything there is to do in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I think Miami has the same problem. They got the Dolphins, the Marlins, the Panthers, the Heat, and about 1,000 different community events and museums and everything. A lot of competition, a lot of competition for the leisure dollar in Miami, and that may have a big chunk to do with it.
I think that with the price of tickets being what they are for Georgia Tech, for Miami, or any of the Pittsburgh, for instance, I would say Pitt's a pretty good football team. Pitt plays in the Steelers Stadium. They have almost zero college stuff at that stadium. I know because I walked that entire stadium trying to find college stuff, and they didn't have any out.
It actually has their own stadium too, Brett.
The Pittsburgh Panthers has their own stadium?
Yeah.
Where?
I don't know where in Pittsburgh, but they do have their own stadium.
Pittsburgh plays in the same stadium as the Steelers, sir.
Yeah,
I know they play some of their games there, but I'm telling you, they have their own stadium. It's not nearly as big as whatever they're calling Heinz Field or whatever that fucking place is called nowadays. But
here's my problem with this whole line of thought. It's a problem when Miami is sharing the Dolphins stadium, but it wasn't a problem when the Dolphins were sharing our stadium.
You miss me.
I mean, there was no difference.
He's talking about Orange Bowl versus Hard Rock.
That the Orange Bowl was around 40 years before the Dolphins came into existence.
Well,
that was the Hurricane Stadium.
I mean, we can talk about where you should have played and all this other stuff, but I really think that with the amount of interest that college football draws on a college football campus, it is a different atmosphere when you're on that campus. Georgia Tech included, Wake Forest included, North Carolina State, Boston College. Boston College is in Boston. There's plenty of stuff to do in Boston.
And everybody always talked about how electric and great the atmosphere was in the Orange Bowl.
Right.
Why they can't recreate. There's no reason they cannot recreate that where they are.
I think that the moment that you put your own stadium on your own campus, it will help your recruiting ranking. It will help your national brand. It will help the overall feel of college football for Miami. And I think the attendance will go up. I don't mean to be rude, but I do not want to go watch a college football team play in a professional stadium, and then the next day the Atlanta Falcons would be paying there. I would. No.
Well, they don't work it like that. Both of them don't play in the stadium on the same weekend. But where's the help we need in recruiting? Mark Richt got a top 10 class after a 9-win season?
Yeah.
They don't need a stadium. They can recruit. I mean, they're going by recruiting rankings now. They're going to end up somewhere around 5 or 6 by the time it's all said and done.
You guys need a stadium. You need a stadium, or you will always be second tier. If you're going to be in college football and you want to be, if you want to be in college football and you want to be top tier, you got to have your own stadium.
I disagree.
And that's why Miami's at where they're at.
There's absolutely zero evidence to back that up. None.
The evidence is that you guys' attendance is the lowest there is in the ACC. You guys' recruiting is lower than teams that do have those facilities and stadiums. And the fact that you guys can't get the quality of coaches that these teams are getting.
There's one team in the ACC that out-recruits us. One. Miami's second most talented team in the conference.
And yet they have the lowest attendance.
Yes, they do.
And they're the only, and even though they're getting the second recruiting class, they're also don't have their own stadium. You don't think your recruiting would improve if you had your own stadium?
No, I think recruiting would improve if you have a coach longer than 3 years.
Don't you think you would get a
That's how I
better?
think
Don't you think you would
recruiting
get a
would work.
better coach if you had a stadium that was his?
So
Dooley Field at Sanford
so wait a
Stadium.
minute. AD's making bad decisions is because we don't have a field. That doesn't make any sense, Brett.
Let me ask you a question. If you are a Nick Saban, you are a Dabo Sweeney, you are a not Mark Richt, you are a Kirby Smart. If you're any of those guys, even if you're Luke Fickle,
I want you to make that make sense before you move on.
Make what make sense?
How AD's making the wrong decision is somehow has to do with us not having a stadium, when they even made the wrong decision when we had a stadium.
So you think that your AD could call up Nick Saban right now and say, tomorrow you're going to report to Miami?
I don't think any team in the country could do that. I don't think Nick Saban's going anywhere. It's a bad example.
It's not an athletic director's decision. It is the pool he gets to choose from.
Well, no, you're using a bad example. There's nobody in the country that can call up Nick Saban and say, we want you here tomorrow, and he's going to be there.
Okay,
Nick
so you
Saban's at
think if you
Alabama
guys
until
call
he's done coaching.
Okay, then we'll step way down. You think Luke Fickle would come to Miami tomorrow?
I don't know. Luke Fickle's turned down a bunch of jobs. I don't know what it would take for Luke Fickle.
I guarantee you he's not going to take a step down to have to play on a field that's not his.
I think that's an argument that doesn't make any sense.
The argument is that your top tier coaches, the very best of the best, are not going to play on a rented field. They want their own college campus. They want their own facilities. They want their indoor practice.
You have zero evidence to back that up other than your feelings.
That's not my feelings. If you look at all of the national champion winning coaches in the past 5 years, they all have those things.
Miami has won 5 national titles without their own stadium. So
when's the last time you won one? And what's your attendance now?
And their attendance, they weren't selling out games back then. What's your point?
Your attendance is the lowest in the ACC. Think about that.
Yes, that makes us no different than before when nobody went to Miami games when they were terrible.
So what you're saying is that even though all of the cars in NASCAR have 4 wheels and an engine, you don't need those things.
No, it's not a relevant example.
Sure
no, it's not. You cannot overlook the fact that we won 5 national titles without our own stadium. They were
That's
sharing
not
it with
what
the
I'm
Dolphins.
overlooking. What I'm telling you is that in the state of college football right now, everything is predicated on recruiting. A coach,
Yes.
a real
Well, it's
coach,
always been.
a real coach giving a choice between having an indoor facility, his real field, all the lighting and all the sound machines and everything at his stadium that's decked out with all of his stuff every single time you walk in there. And he can bring players in and he can say, this is your field, versus the same coach who has to say, hey guys, let's get in a bus and drive 2 hours over to the Miami stadium. And let me show you what we get to use every now and then. There's no comparison.
I think you have zero evidence to back that up.
I think the recruiting classes
irrelevant.
I think the recruiting classes are the evidence.
I don't think a stadium at all sells a program. I think the facilities they're in every day, not a stadium they're going to play in 6 times a year.
In today's current college football environment, Slim, a stadium absolutely does.
I don't agree.
Have a lot to do with it. Well, I mean, that's okay. It's your prerogative. But if you just look at the numbers and look at what they're talking about, and I'm not saying you're wrong or Brett's right, but it does definitely have a large impact now on these kids. I mean, that's why everybody's got a light show, a DJ,
And Brett trying to equivocate it with recruiting. No, instability at coaching is the reason their recruiting hasn't been up to snuff.
That's a fact also.
So let's back it up. Let's say that is the case. Let's say that the instability at coaching is the case. Why do you have instability at coaching?
Because they're firing somebody every 3 years.
Why are they
or
firing
hiring the wrong guy?
No.
I don't think you find out if you have the right guy in 3 seasons. Especially if you hire a guy that's never been a head coach before.
So everything goes back to recruiting. So we're going to start out with recruiting, and I'm going to work it all the way around and take off your Miami glasses for a minute, and I want you to look at this objectively. Everything's based on recruiting. The best players, having the best players more often than not is going to give you the best quality football team. The best players out there want the best facilities, period. They want to be treated like stars. They want to have their own field. They want to have their own locker room. They want to have their own indoor facility. They want to have all the nicest stuff. That's why Georgia, that's why Ohio State, that's why Clemson, that's why Alabama have all spent millions and tens of millions of dollars. And I think University of Tennessee just upgraded their indoor facilities as well to get these recruiting players. And that's what those players see. When you don't have those facilities, if it's not as shiny as what somebody else has, you're not going there. That's just the way these kids are nowadays. If you don't have the players, you don't have the Jimmys and the Joes, it don't matter about the X's and the O's.
I absolutely agree with that. But there's a difference between on-campus facilities and the stadium. Those are two different things.
So I'm gonna hold on. Let me address Rick Sanchez. Hey, Rick, why don't you tell me how if coaches are the reasons why you win or lose, then why are the UCF Knights doing so poorly right now? Because Gus Malzahn was able to beat Alabama and he was able to recruit in the SEC. He's an elite coach, but yet he's underwater. Hold on. No. He's underwater right now, UCF. So it ain't just coaches. You can take Nick Saban and you can take him down there and you can put him on, I don't know, Georgia Tech. And I guarantee you he don't have a winning record.
Probably not year one, but I bet you he does within the next 2 or 3.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Look at Tennessee, prime fucking example right now. Heupel, he inherited shit at Tennessee. We're basically playing with pretty much the same players we had when he got there, save for, a half a dozen transfer portal inserts. Coaching, to me, that I can only use Tennessee as an example. Clear night and day between the Pruitt staff and the Heupel staff. I mean, he's got these kids believing. He's got them playing like they're champions, even though they haven't really done shit yet.
I still want to see more out of him.
Well, yeah, we all do.
What I mean is, so far he's built, a team that looks to be maybe on par with what Lincoln Riley could do at Oklahoma. He hasn't built a complete team yet. That's what I mean.
We'll see. I mean, I've been probably more reserved this year definitely more reserved this year than I have in all my years on YouTube, and that's for obvious reasons. You get trained to be accustomed to losing. Like, I'm just now starting to come around to the fact that, hey, maybe this team can go undefeated. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying maybe they can. And even a year ago, if you'd have told anybody in this of us four right now before the season started, hey, Tennessee's going to be 8-0 going to the Georgia game and ranked number 1 in the college playoffs, you guys have been like, you're fucking smoking crack.
Oh yeah, I'd have laughed in your face, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I would have too.
I think I would laugh too, but
Tennessee is one of those teams that, and this isn't a shot at Tennessee, I've put them in the exact same boat as Miami. They've had talent, but when you are constantly turning over coaches over and over and over, you cannot get anything built. Florida's falling into that same category. And yes, every once in a while you can pull off a good season. Florida did in 2020. Miami did in 17. Tennessee is this year.
Auburn with Cam Newton.
That doesn't mean you can't have success. But until you have Auburn with Cam Newton. Exactly. Well, even Gus made it to the national title one year. Until you cannot get anything built until you have consistency.
You're not going to have consistency until you get a coach who understands that you need the players. It's not going to happen.
Well, we've got the best recruiter in the country, so that's coming.
Who?
Doesn't do you any good if you can't coach them up, though.
Yeah, well, and we'll see. And I think he can, because I think Dan Lanning is enjoying the fruits of Mario Cristobal's work at Oregon. But we'll see in time.
I'll tell you like this. If I was a recruit, and any recruit that I know, Miami doesn't have a big enough brand name right now to sway me away from a bigger named college with a better coaching staff with better facilities. They don't have a big enough named head coach right now.
Well,
either.
his recruiting ability is already proving you wrong. He's going to end up with a top 5-6 class with a 7-5 team.
And how much of that is based off of his recruiting talent versus the recruiting talent of boosters?
Oh, I'm absolutely certain it's based off his recruiting talent because I mean
the $9.5 million deal had nothing to do with that player.
Is that confirmed? That hadn't been confirmed anywhere other than Twitter. That's it.
Don't you just love college football?
And I mean, he's sitting here trying to make an argument that a guy that's won National Recruiter of the Year 4 times isn't a great recruiter. That's a silly argument, Brett. And anybody with 3 brain cells to rub together would call you foolish.
About what now? Come again.
That Mario Cristobal is either the best or one of the best recruiters in the nation.
Yeah, you could probably put Mario Cristobal in the frozen tundra of Nebraska, and he could probably get a handful of quality recruits that'll push him into the top 10. I have no doubt. However, it does not change the fact that after 1 or 2 years, they're either going to transfer away or he's going to get fired because you don't have the facilities to keep these players around when you're not winning. They're not going to go to a school where they're going to lose. Shitty facilities.
You're making a feelings-based argument with no evidence.
The evidence is the players don't stay. The evidence is you guys don't win games. The evidence is you guys
Name
don't
the
have
massive
high
amount of
attendance. The evidence is you
transfers
don't
that
have
we
a quality
have.
coach. The evidence is
Name
you
the
ain't won the
massive
ACC
amount
in the
of
past 5 or 6 years. That's all
Name
the
the
evidence.
massive amount of transfers that we have. We don't have any.
Everybody has transfers. Even look at
Exactly.
Alabama; they have guys leaving all the time.
But we don't have a massive amount of guys leaving.
I think we had 35 hit the portal when they hired Heupel.
And no, Brett, no team in the country is going to win consistently when you're bringing in a new head coach every 3 years. I can't believe that has to be explained.
It doesn't have to be explained. The part that has to be explained is that you don't understand why that keeps happening to you. You refuse to believe.
But it has zero to do with a stadium.
You refuse to believe that having bad facilities is hurting your program.
They actually have great facilities now.
If you don't have your own stadium, you don't have great facilities.
Okay.
You have a
in your opinion, you have zero evidence to back it up. It's nothing but an opinion.
Overall composite rank 16 in recruiting class. That's a hard fact for you. How about last year, number 11? 2020. Let's see, what was it? 17. Yeah, these are great numbers, man. All of these stats that you keep ignoring are all reasons why it's more difficult for you guys.
And has zero to do with a stadium. It has to do with the fact that every 3 years there's another coach.
You know, it may be possible, just voice of reason here, it may be possible that both of you are correct on this. It may be possible that one of the reasons that Miami is having trouble with recruiting is because 1A is they have an instability problem with coaching, and 1B, you don't have your facility, you don't have an on-campus stadium, and that's causing.
They've never had an on-campus stadium, so that already proves that argument wrong.
Well,
they've won without it
20 years ago.
2001.
They've won without it with shit facilities. Now they're upgrading their facilities, which I absolutely agree that they need to. I'm just indifferent on the stadium.
We can go round and round about this all we want, but at the end of the day, the highest recruited players on average are going to go to the places with everything. They're not going to go to places with the least amount of stuff.
Number 2 player in the country is coming to the place that you say has the least amount of stuff.
The only reason that he's going there is because of you guys as cornerback coach. That's the only reason he's going there. He's going there because of that one cornerback coach who was a pro player who has promised him he's going to get him to the NFL. He's developed a relationship with that one guy. That's it. Has nothing to do with Miami at all. If that coach was anywhere else in the country, he'd go there.
He developed a relationship with a guy that's been there 5 minutes instead of the guy that's been recruiting him for 2 years. Because he specifically named DeMarcus Van Dyke.
That's correct, because DeMarcus Van Dyke is one of the most elite players to ever grace the NFL field. That's like saying, if my next door neighbor was a Golden Glove boxer in the Navy and he's been my friend for 5 years, I should go hang out with him. Or if Mike Tyson shows up and goes, "Hey man, let me teach you how to box." Yeah, I'm going to go hang out with Mike Tyson, even if I just met him for 5 minutes.
Well, you're also making my argument for me because he came to Miami with no stadium, no facilities, shit.
The fact that you can point out the one player, the one and only one, realistically, that, this player came to this. The number one player in the freaking country, went to Jackson State because of Deion Sanders, right? And you think that makes your argument. It doesn't. It actually disproves your argument because you're going to have these elite players who every now and then make dumb decisions. You want to tell him he's breaking up so he doesn't think it's me?
Try it again, Slim. We lost you there for a minute.
And by the way, Brett, you guys are right. Pitt does play in Heinz Field or whatever now, but they used to have their own stadium called Forbes Field or some shit like that.
Right, yeah.
But it was deemed inadequate in like 2000, I don't know, 1 or 2 or something like that.
Number one player in the country, Travis Hunter, flips from FSU to Jackson State. Guess what Jackson State has? They got
a $2 million check for him.
They got a stadium.
Well,
they got a $2 million check for him. So I'll throw your own argument back at you. They have a $2 million check for him. That's what they have.
Yeah, I never said that wasn't a problem. But it doesn't go to the coaches recruiting. It goes to the NIL recruiting.
Well, Florida State has their own stadium. I mean, it's a shithole, but it's their own stadium. So
I noticed that this player didn't go to Miami, even though Miami is awesome without a stadium. Today's day and age, these players are going to go.
Why would you come to Miami when your coach isn't going to stay there? That's their problem. They have to stop firing people and keep somebody there for longer than 3 seasons, and they'll be just fine.
Miami is not going to keep a coach there for longer than 3 seasons if they're not absolutely blowing it out of the water. They're not going to be able to You're not going to be able to win on a consistent basis without a strong recruiting class. You're not going to get a strong recruiting class without top-tier recruits. And getting 1 or 2 is not enough. You've got to get 15 consistently.
Okay, but
those 15 players every year.
Every coach there has managed top 10 classes. Even when they were down. Hell, Randy Shannon brought in the number 1 class in the country.
And how long did that last? One time?
Well, once again, they fired him way before he needed to be.
I'm just telling you, in today's day and age, if you don't have the top-tier talent, you're not going to get it done. Tennessee figured it out. Tennessee figured out that they needed a much better quarterback, so they brought in a transfer from Virginia Tech, and look at how he's doing.
Well, yes, I know. They went to a superior conference and got a superior player.
Oh, my God. Oh.
I had to take that shot. It was a slow ball down the middle. I had to swing at that.
He's got to admit, Brett, you did leave that one.
Oh, I lined him up. I just didn't think he'd actually say that and embarrass himself. But okay. He's a mediocre quarterback at Virginia Tech in the ACC Coastal. He's a Heisman contender in the SEC. Obviously, he's got stiffer competition in the ACC Coastal.
Clearly.
Oh, man.
Maybe what he needed was just better facilities.
But no, I think that offensive system is pretty good.
Clearly.
I think that Hendon Hooker is generational talent that took him a little while to develop. He started out as a 4-star recruit and then worked his way up.
I think he's eons better than Will Levis, too.
I think he's better than AR-15. That's for damn sure.
I would argue that he's better than Stetson Bennett.
Now I heard AR-15 was winning the Heisman preseason. Come on now.
You didn't hear that from me. You did not hear that from me, Sunshine.
I didn't say it came from you.
I would have been happy if AR-15 completed 40% of his passes.
Although, to be fair, from
he
those same
like
Florida
a damn
fans,
Heisman contender against our defense.
To be fair, from the same Florida fans that said that AR-15 would win the Heisman, they also told me that Emily Jones was going to win the Heisman too.
Yeah, they did.
No, again,
Yeah, they did.
again, did not hear that from me. Never heard it from me. You cannot produce
No,
a single piece of tape.
He didn't say you. He didn't say you.
I
He
didn't-
said
I
Florida
just said-
fans.
exactly.
Who am I? Who am I? A Florida fan.
Not,
You're
Who the
a
hell
Florida fan.
who saw Jacoby Brissett being an NFL starter? Nobody.
Not
Nobody.
me. No, you
Well,
know why
I mean,
Jacoby Brissett is an NFL starter? Because they got no fucking choice.
That's all right. He's lighting it
Hey.
up.
Hey, sometimes it's being in the right place at the right time, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, hey, even Mitch Trubisky started in the NFL, so there's hope for anybody.
Hey, Doug Johnson got drafted by the Falcons and actually played a game or two. So
Hell, what's his
You know.
name? Won a Super Bowl with Tampa. Who was that guy back then?
Brad Johnson.
No, God bless.
You're talking about Trent Dilfer when he left?
Yeah, Trent Dilfer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, he probably went to the greatest defense the NFL's ever seen, that 2000 Ravens team.
For those of you who don't know, Doug Johnson was the quarterback that came after Danny Werfel. And Doug Johnson was one of the contributing factors as to why Steve Spurrier left the Gators and retired. Doug Johnson was the first quarterback in the SEC to shut down the Gator offense because none of the other teams could do it. Don't at me. I'm right.
And also, I think outside of Miami consistently firing coaches, I think the same reason that you're seeing Miami and teams like Tennessee as well have problems in the stretch they have. Because look, when they were on top, Georgia was in the dumpster when Tennessee was on top. Alabama was in the dumpster when Tennessee was on top. The college football is just cyclical like that.
Florida wasn't. Never mind.
No, Florida and Tennessee were dominating the SEC overall during that time. And, I mean, you're talking about pre-Mark Richt. I mean, from the mid-'80s until basically Mark Richt got there, Georgia was the equivalent of what Miami's been over this 15-year stretch.
I say bring back Jim Donnan to the Bulldogs. Things would be all square in the world.
We don't talk like that on here. Save that profanity for yourself.
I mean, look, as much as everybody talks bad about Nebraska now, I mean, they were the absolute gold standard for college football for the better part of 40 years.
Yeah, well, if you play criminals and break all the rules, I guess you can be the best at everything, right?
That's why
never mind that. Nobody wants to talk about that.
That's why Tom Osborne's always been my pick for the greatest college football coach of all time.
Yeah, because he can break the law and get away with it.
Hey, whatever.
You ain't cheating, you ain't trying. What?
What you said?
Anyway, I gotta go, guys. I actually do have to shut her down because I got somewhere to be and I gotta get ready to go. So I do have to leave.
You don't have to lie to us like that. You can just say you don't want to talk to us anymore.
Tell him, Slim.
I'm not lying to you. I got,
No, you just don't want to talk to us, so you're coming up with excuses. It's okay.
If I didn't want to talk to you, I wouldn't start the damn stream in the first place.
I'll sit here and talk.
Hey, real quick. Hey, Slim, I appreciate you mixing it up with me, man. A lot of people scared to do it.
Hey, man, I have fun with it always.
I do too. Well, a lot of people will get intimidated or they'll get shook up and they won't come back at me. So it's hard to have a conversation like that with anybody without them either getting ticked off and just saying, yeah, well, screw you, or running away.
Yeah,
so.
a lot of people are like that. They get their feelings into it, and it's just like, hey, guess what, people? Two people can have different opinions on something, and the world will keep on spinning.
In this day and age, though, that doesn't work. You have different opinion from me. I have to destroy you.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that I won't say men, but I'll say guys used to be able to have a disagreement about something, even passionately, and not hate somebody.
Still have a beer with them afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Now
Well,
it's like I got to block you on Twitter.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm not going to unsubscribe from you. I promise.
Oh man, I've always enjoyed the trash talk aspect of college football. It's just always
even beyond the trash talk, even just the back and forth, on the topic that we were. I mean, I like having serious football conversations as much as I do trash talking back and forth.
Yep.
Well, I hope you guys won't unsubscribe from me, of course.
I'm not subscribing to you now.
Why not?
Just kidding. How do you think I know when your lives come on, man?
He was just roaming YouTube, and it just happened to stumble across it.
I sent you a text message. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway.
All right. Well, I'm gonna jump off here and let you guys get back to it. I had fun today, Slim. Thanks, man.
Yeah,
thanks for making it. Thanks for making it a lively discussion there, big man.
Yep. I got a Georgia Tennessee video coming out later today, Slim. You'll enjoy it.
I'll check it out.
All right. Later, guys. Thanks.
See you.
All right, my friend. Slim. Yes, sir. Hey, by the way, I've been meaning to ask you real quick before I go.
Yeah. Sure.
What size T-shirt do you wear? I have a present for you.
Extra large.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. Is it long sleeve or short sleeve?
Short sleeve.
Extra large.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll get in touch with you on where to ship it to.
Okay, no problem.
All right, boss.
Thank you, my friend. All right. Well, I appreciate those guys and gal when she was on, stopping by and making the StreamYard a lively place to be. I did keep an eye on the chat a little bit. It looked like y'all were having fun in there. So I'm going to wrap it up for episode 110 of Wednesday Afternoon Live with SaleenDriver, me. The show about nothing in particular, and we proved that today, although it was a lot of college football. I will see you guys all next week. I am hoping next Wednesday I will log on here and be a very, very happy man because of what is going to happen next Tuesday. That's all I'm going to say about that, but I hope to be a very, very happy man on Wednesday, the 9th. But until then, thanks for stopping by. Y'all take it easy. I appreciate y'all being here. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your football. I'll try myself. See you.